Well, good morning, and again, Keith Hayes with Mirador Television, broadcasting from the White Hart in Lewes, East Sussex. And in a moment, hopefully, we're going to take us out of safety zone and go off to New York. But I thought it might be interested to see what the forecast is for this area. And the normally when we look at the newspapers in the morning, we always get a bit of a giggle out of. Always get a bit of a giggle out of the Star, which always takes a different tack to the rest of the papers, and it has the game this morning, and I'm just trying to find it. And of course, it is never easy when you want something that normally is there for the asking, and isn't when you need it most. But yes, here we are. Is the Star, and basically what the Star has to say is its front page is. Five deluges on the way. Summer brolly days. It reports that 5 Atlantic deluges are on the way to the UK in the next 2 weeks, calling them the curse of the Great British Staycation. Its headline says Brits should prepare for summer brolly days, as why they've got a dog and a raccoon hiding under an umbrella, as the reviewer says. Why that? Heaven only knows. But the summer brolly days is we are in for a series of storms, and certainly all this week we can expect poor weather, and all next week we can expect poor weather, and the week after that we can expect poor weather. If the Star is to be believed, then we're going to have very bad weather. Certainly, we can expect some storms, thunderstorms, and as early as today. So that's where we're at the moment. Now, it is while we're just waiting to see if we can bring in Suzanne from New York. Let's just take a look at the inside of the papers, because for instance, I have in front of me the Daily Mail, and its headline is that £10 billion boost from scrapping tourist tax. If we scrapped having a VAT and that sort of stuff, a purchase tax on goods that we sell to tourists, then we would have actually a net gain to the treasury of £10 billion into the coffers, which would go a long way to easing some of the pain that we're feeling at the moment. One headline is that amused me is that apparently Prince William went into Bermondsey and saw a chap who sells hamburgers off a mobile cafe. So he went and helped him. People are going ordering a hamburger, surprised to see the heir to the throne handing him out. And the headline is William the Burger King. It's quite funny. living in luxury, the County Lines kingpin, who claimed he was a modern slavery victim. It's amazing, if I tell a porky, it catches up with me within minutes. Some people manage to create a whole new persona, and they get away with it. So here's a man who has claimed he was a modern victim of slavery, right? It is and Dante Morrison, his name is. It didn't look like a penniless slave when the reporter Rebecca Camber went to visit him. He was relaxing on a £100,000 sports car with a £1,000 Louis Vuitton bag draped over his shoulder. Morrison it doesn't look like a penniless slave. On the contrary, the 26-year-old appeared to enjoy all the trappings of wealth, shopping for Chanel in Harrods, showing off his wads of cash on social media, and splashing out on flash holidays abroad. Yet when the drug kingpin was caught running a county lines operation, recruiting children as young as 14 on Snapchat, he attempted to convince police and prosecutors that he was the victim of modern slavery. Well, that's what modern slavery does for you. Good for him. Good for anybody who's doing that. He built this persona. Now, this much vaunted, much criticised, very controversial HS2, the railway line that is going to make all the difference to the north, we're told, by joining north and south. Except nobody goes to work anymore. Is that the future is in turmoil, as a watchdog has done an investigation and calls it unachievable. So everybody's rushing in every direction. There have been several windows in which the government could have stopped this project, which is costing billions. But they have decided to press ahead with it, despite the very best advice being cut your losses. And it also says is the rail boss, the CEO, if you want to call him that, is £300,000 a year salary. Nice work if you can get it. Who flies to stations rather than take the train. Now, just following on from what I was saying, is there is a more serious view of the weather, and it says whether we've skipped summer and moved straight into autumn, the figures back you up. It looks as if we've had it, so July was cooler than June for the first time in more than half a century, and the wettest since 2009. And there's little sign of August being much of an improvement, with the Met Office warning that the prospect for any prolonged dry and hot spells next month are currently unlikely. So that's it. We had all our summers in June. Just potter through, and I don't see Susanna's come on yet. Oh yes, it's all about Rishi Sunak taking the side of motorists. I mean that will split everybody. Some people will say that's awful, and other people will say, "Oh, thank God, somebody is worried about the fact that you can't go shopping because you can't get parking." Um, Also, Rishi Sunak is going back to North Sea oil and gas. And we were told that it's all drained out, and that's why it stopped. And towns like Aberdeen, for instance, have gone from being a very small fishing town to a very important oil town, and then back again. Now have a resurgence. Um, 1 in 4 GPs has private health insurance as the NHS struggles. Oh dear, 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 dear. They're all really. Uh, and here she is. Here she is. Good morning, Suzanne. Let's see. Hang on. There you go. There we are. Beautiful as ever, and buoyant, and tell us what you've been up to, because you were on your travels again last week.
Yeah, I'm working on a project that I have to be at the job site like before 7 o'clock here. So I have to leave here before 6. And so that's why I have to like rush out after this to go to the job site. But everything's good. Yeah, next week we're going to Florida for a family vacation. So that should be fun. So
Oh, right, yes. Now, the nice thing about you is that you do a lot of things which we consider here to be typically American, but which we wouldn't do in our own backyard. Now, tell us what is a typical uh, vacation, family vacation in the United States entail?
well, I don't know if there's a typical one because usually it's a week or two off. Usually a week, not often two, and then you go somewhere in the U.S. A lot of people have been going to national parks in the United States. Have you heard about that? Like all of the national parks are packed, and different aspects of nature are rebelling. There's like
No, no. Now, you see, these are the things which we always make a basic assumption that we do know about these things. Now, that's the first that I've heard about it. So tell us, that is interesting.
yeah, all the the really well known national parks like Yellowstone and just beautiful places like Antelope Canyon and all those kinds of things. There's been bear attacks and a lot of kind of interfaces with nature that because they're so crowded. And the way that the national parks work, I guess they used to give you like an hour to come in. Like you would apply to go to the national park and they would give you an hour to come in, which meant that you had a place to park and all this kind of stuff. But now they've been changing that, and so more and more people are coming. And I guess it's been problematic in some parts of the U.S. But I mean, these places are stunning. I mean, they're like, I've actually never been to one. I haven't even been to the Grand Canyon, which is also a national park. But it's just supposed to be like kind of awe-inspiring to go to these places. But that's a big vacation for Americans. Then of course, the other vacation for Americans is going to Europe, going over to your side of the pond. So
Yeah. Oh, the natives are known to bite here as well.
that's right. That's right. That's what we've been hearing. No, I'm kidding.
No, I mean we make Americans welcome, and in fact, strangely enough, one of the headlines in the paper this morning is the governments, of course, always trying to get the last penny out of everybody. And at one time, you could come here and you would get duty free. You didn't pay tax on it as long as you were taking it home. So they decided to do away with that, and they put the tax on. Very unpopular, and the numbers visiting plummeted. So now the government is licking its wounds and saying, well, perhaps we'll reinstate the tax free. And an expert has come and said, yeah, you should, because is what the headlines say is a £10 billion boost from scrapping the tourist tax. It's governments are strange organizations. They ignore what everybody knows until
Yeah.
they're proved wrong, and then they suddenly say, "Oh well, we've got to do that."
Yeah, like it's their idea, right? Oh, well, it
Yes.
would be such a fantastic idea to do. Yeah, well, it's never easy to get your VAT back. So, yeah, I mean, when you're coming back to the States, if you're buying it in Europe and you're not buying it in duty-free shops or something, you have to go to a specific place in a specific airport and like stand on your head and twist
Yeah.
around and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So,
It's silly nonsense, isn't it? The Well, anyway, they're now talking about making it easy again basically, you go into the shop and you buy it at the price less the sales tax. Makes absolute sense to me.
yeah, absolutely. Well, to me too, because I.
Well, we must tell all your viewers back in the States is it's all right. You're now going to get cheaper goods. You can come back again.
Yes, exactly. You can come and get all of your luxury goods at tax free, but
Absolutely.
but when we're going to a place called Marco Island, which is in Florida, and it's kind of off of the southern, well, kind of the southwestern coast of Florida. It's a little tiny island that has it's right on the Gulf of Mexico, and it's a beautiful place. The sunsets are incredible. So we're going to go down there with the kids, and then one day we'll drive across Florida, because you can drive across the width of Florida on a road called Alligator Alley, and you can get to Miami. So we're going to be going to Miami for a day to visit some friends in Miami. So
All right. So, but is that what you look for? Is nice sunsets and beaches? You don't look for Coney Island type things.
I don't know. No, we don't look for, yeah. Although my husband really likes amusement parks, none of my kids really do. Even my daredevil son doesn't really like amusement parks. So.
Oh dear. So your husband has to go on his own.
He has to go on his own. Although if we do go, he goes on these crazy rides and we all just watch him go on them. So. And then yesterday, I didn't tell you what happened yesterday. Yesterday we were at our beach club for the day, and they had a shark sighting and they had to pull all the people out of the water. So
Jaws.
Yes. Although they did not behave as the people do in Jaws. I mean, everybody got out of the water very orderly. There was no panic. And so, which I thought was interesting. I can't say that I've ever seen that before. So it was kind of interesting to see. So.
Tell us about a beach club. You said that we went to our beach club. What's a beach club?
So our friends, so my daughter's best friend, her family has been going to this beach club for like 15 years. And during the pandemic, when we started hanging out a lot and going on these like pandemic play dates that I think I talked about, where we would go, it'd be freezing cold outside and we'd have like 10 layers of coats, but we'd all stay outside and go have a picnic or something. They suggested that we join this beach club, and because it was the pandemic, no one else was joining, so it was relatively easy to get in. Now you can't even get into the place, but we got, it's like a 6 foot by 4 foot kind of locker kind of thing. I think they have them in similar things in what's that town right outside of London that's on the water that starts with a B? Brighton.
Yes.
Yeah, Brighton has those little kind of like I don't know, kind of cabana kind of things that people paint really brightly and stuff. Well, it's similar to that, except ours is much smaller.
Right.
And so it's this great club. It's right on the ocean in a place called Atlantic Beach, and the place also has a huge pool and a cafe, and so we meet a bunch of friends there, and then. I have to tell you, if you think Americans can't chat, I mean, this is the place for chatting. Everyone just sits down and talks. I mean, they take it to a whole other level. That would be I should do an on the site report showing all of the conversation that happens there. I mean, it's really great.
I mean, you can still do stuff off your phone, with our software. All you need is your phone with you to do some of these things.
All right, I think we should do that because this
Yes.
goes to a whole other level. I mean, the kinds of they can talk about anything and everything for hours and hours.
Ah, well, there we are. You see,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you just seriously how interested people are to find out the differences in the way that you live and the way that we live. I mean, re-quoting Churchill, which I've done before, is two great nations separated by a common language. Is we speak the same language, but in fact, our lifestyles are quite different. And to find out how you live is fascinating and interesting. Incidentally, the little town beginning with B that you mentioned, Brighton, is just 5 miles from where I'm sitting at the moment.
See, there you go.
There you go.
When I went to the only time I've ever been to London in my whole life, I spent one of the days, and I was only there for 2 days, in Brighton for a meeting. And it was
there.
pouring down rain. It was like literally like buckets of rain the entire time. So,
Well, it's a very, it's got quite a history, Brighton. It was a later community. Lewis was founded in about 800 AD by King Alfred. King Alfred, yes. And Brighton really only started to come into its own in the 1800s when George IV, when he was the Prince Regent, used to go down there to take his mistresses. And he was very fond of architecture that was Indian. And so now in Brighton, there is the Brighton Pavilion, which is his former residence. And it's got all sorts of domes and cupolas and all sorts of things. And it's now a museum, of course, you can go and see. One of the features being is that his bedroom, they would lock up at night and say, good night, Your Majesty. And he would then slip out through a secret door and go on a tunnel to a house where Mrs. Fitzherbert, his mistress, was about 200 yards away. And then he would leave her early in the morning and hop back. And to all intents and purposes, he'd never been out of his bedroom.
that is crazy. I don't know. It sounds like some of the English rulers had a real thing for women. I mean, you have so many stories like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe it's not particular only to England, but
well, it's not telling tales out of school. This is slightly apocryphal, but it is said that when Charles was having a lot of trouble with Diana, he went to the Queen Mother, the late Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth, and he was very fond of his grandma and obviously poured his heart out. And she said, "Ah, but my dear, do what your ancestors always have done. Find yourself a mistress."
wow, that is some interesting advice. I don't know. You say I don't agree with that. I would not give that advice to my son, I can tell you that.
But then you're not a leader. Well, you are a leader, but you're not a royalty. Should I put it that way?
I'm not
they
royalty,
have their own funny rules, believe me.
I guess they do. Well, so that's one reason not to be royalty, because I would rather not have that kind of life. So
well, to be quite honest with you, it sounds very fairy tale like, but the restrictions on their lifestyle and the things that they have to do and don't do are just enormous. I actually from time to time lecture a bit on protocol, and the ladies have to have special weights in the bottom of their dresses, so the wind will never blow up, and the royal knickers can never be seen. And then when they're at in banquets and so on, is they have to be restricted to what they can drink, because royals don't pee. You can't leave the table to get in the bathroom.
Well, there's quite a contrast between American culture and British culture, because British culture, they wear weights at the bottom of their dresses, and then in American culture, we have Marilyn Monroe, who purposefully stands on top of a subway grate to have her skirt flow up in the air.
Let me just go back to your beach club, because that does sound very interesting. But how do these things? I mean, is it private beach?
So the way that so there are parts of you've heard of Long Island, right?
Yes.
Long Island actually starts with Brooklyn. So Brooklyn is part of Long Island. And then it goes all the way to the other point, to the other eastern point, which is Montauk. And so there are barrier islands off of Long Island. And so Atlantic Beach and Long Beach are barrier islands. So they're further into the ocean. And then also you have Fire Island, which is on the other end, like on the eastern end. So this beach is on Atlantic Beach, and Atlantic Beach had been settled, gosh, I guess this was like about 150 years ago or so. And they started building these kind of small communities, and then they ultimately kind of emerged into these beach communities that only exist during the summer. So you can't go there in the winter. So they have these kind of special permits to use these small huts, and there's some that are actually apartments, but you can only stay there during the summer anyway. But and you pay a fee to belong to these, and so it is private, and all of the beach along those clubs are all maintained by the club, and so the beach is like spotless. It's really beautiful, but again, it's even though it's basically maintained as a private beach, anybody can walk by and use the water and everything. It's not, but the whole area is completely spotless. And so, but there's a series of them. So we belong to one called Silver Point, but then there's one called Malibu, and then there's one called like Sands. Like there's different ones, and some of them are much more expensive than others. Some of them have super fancy stuff and super fancy restaurants, and ours has kind of a cafe. And but I didn't even know it existed, and I lived in Manhattan my entire life, and I didn't know it existed until 3 years ago during the pandemic, and our friends mentioned it. So it is a little bit of a little best kept secret kind of thing,
Yes, yes. Well, the British know about it, but not your neighbours.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, it's funny you mentioned about Brighton, like not really becoming a place to kind of hang out until the 1800s. New York City, with all of its beauty, has never really been terribly sympathetic to its waterfront. We never spent money on it. I mean, when New York started kind of, becoming sort of an industry of its own, all of the coastlines had like the slaughtering plants, like the meat packing district and the pig slaughtering district, and then what else did they have? They had like, metal working along the coast, because that's where all the ships could easily come up, and, shipping was easier. So I would say it hasn't been that long, like within the last like 20 years or so, you were talking about the government. Some different government officials have started to invest in it. And on Saturday, I went to lunch with a friend of mine who was in town from Italy. And we had lunch in this restaurant on Hudson Yards. Have you heard about Hudson Yards? It's this whole new big area that's been added to New York. It's like on the west side in the 30s, and tons and tons of big buildings and a whole new kind of development. Well, we had lunch on this little terrace on the 24th floor of this building, with this fantastic view of the Hudson River. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And I was thinking to myself, as a kid, this whole area used to be like just basically like a blight, honestly. I mean, there was drugs, there was prostitution, nobody would go there. And now it's like this incredible area that they're investing in, and you can finally see the gorgeous river,
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was first of all, it was a lot of fun. We had a great time, but I'm happy to see that cities are making these investments. So it was fun.
It's very interesting, actually, because our Docklands area, which is now the place to live and the centre of the financial district and so on, it was the old docks. And when they started to rebuild, because it was bombed, very heavily bombed during the war, when they started to rebuild, they did it in a hurry. and they built the office blocks and that sort of thing, but no infrastructure. So they had to catch up with the infrastructure. Belfast, on the other hand, with the bombing and terrorist activity during the 70s, where I spent most of my journalistic career, it actually built its infrastructure before it started to put these things into place. And it was interesting how quickly the two developed. So, forward thinking is not a bad thing for cities to do.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes such a difference. And then about 2 weeks ago, I think I may have mentioned it. I went to an event in Brooklyn, and it was a fundraiser for this public pool called Pool Plus, and this group wanted to put a new pool in the Hudson, in the East River, and it was going to be a big public pool with Olympic size style swimming and stuff like that. And then they had different kinds of ideas. But in order to do something like that, it is going to be a floating pool. In order to do something like that, you have to do so much water testing and so much environmental work before you can even begin to think about it, that the group called Pool Plus was raising a lot of money. And so they started using that money to teach people how to swim, because you'd be surprised how many Americans don't know how to swim.
Amazing. Yeah.
So they're making this big investment in, underprivileged areas and disadvantaged communities, teaching everyone how to swim as part of this effort to ultimately have this new huge public pool in the East River. And I was thinking, it's these ideas that seem so insignificant, but they make such a major change to people's lives,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It was really interesting. And now it's funny, I go to this event, and I don't know if it's because, phones are now tracking my mind or not, but I go to this event, and now there's several articles about the importance of public pools in society, about the importance of teaching swimming and everything. It was really interesting. I'm like, wow, I think there's like some kind of mind tracker that's going around. Anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's very encouraging to know that this sort of forward thinking is. I can remember way back in, let's see, it would be 1960s, where people were planning leisure activities. And the whole idea was, let's build a basketball court and let's make everybody play basketball. Or let's build a little theatre and make them all go and take drama lessons and so on. And then this chap in America came up with this astonishing change in view, and he said, "Hang about." He said that the man who sits on his balcony in New York City on a steamy, hot day with a beer in his hand is enjoying his leisure as much as somebody playing basketball. So we've got to start to take that into account. And of course, it's changed the whole face of the way that we now approach leisure activities and what people should do and so on. It's amazing, as you say, little thoughts start to grow into great big concepts.
Yes, yeah, and they really do change people's lives too, which is so.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, a little catch up. How is my opera company coming?
They're doing very well. We've been, Stefanos was preparing a grant, so he's been spending a lot of time preparing a grant. So that is happening. And then we also decided to create T-shirts and things like that we can start to sell as well. So he has this we have a logo, and then we also have this really gorgeous drawing that was done for the opera that we're putting on in October called La Vestale. And so we're going to make T-shirts. I'll definitely show the T-shirt. You can sell them to your viewers. So
absolutely, yes.
Yeah, but it's going really well. And in the midst of trying to sell the tickets, he also, I think I mentioned that he also has this kind of educational mission to teach and educate about opera to youths and things. So he just did his first annual report for that effort, and it's really terrific. He's the calculations is that 4,000 students learned more about opera this past year because of this program. And so he was able to, and sometimes I joined him actually, he was able to reach out to high schools and teach at high schools. And then he was able to give free tickets to the opera to over 200 students. So a lot of really fun things that he's been
Yeah.
doing. So yeah, it's
Well,
good.
now, is it you and Dr. Mark maybe are going to have when we come back from our vacation, because we're going to take 2 weeks off, the last 2 weeks in August, and then we're going to come back on the 4th. But I know he actually emailed me last night and said, I've been trying to contact Suzanne to talk about our ideas. So he's looking for you. But you're going to, I mean, I know how dedicated you are to adult and further education programs, and you're going to, the two of you are going to do one on Mirador.
Yeah,
You've got until September, but don't let the grass grow under your feet.
it won't. It won't. I know we've been trying. We've been keep on missing each other, but I will definitely email him today and get it organized. So
Right. Well, I'm looking forward to that because the two of you, I think, will make one of the things that we find. Quite often they happen by accident, but sometimes design, is that if you get a team of two people, for instance, it's John Henty, who I've known for years and years and years, and he and I just spark off one another. Indeed, you and I do as well. Is if you get a good team, it becomes very attractive television. And I know Mark maybe very well, and I know you very well, and I think you'll make a terrific team. The only thing is, that people start to watch the two of you because you're entertaining, and you have to keep on forcing their attention back to the education that you're trying to pass on to them.
well, there's many ways to educate, right?
Absolutely. Well, it's 11:05, and you've got to go out to get early in the morning. Thank you for joining us. I always appreciate you getting up early and coming on. But believe me, Monday wouldn't be the same without you. And if you're not here, I mean, last week I actually get complaints from people as if it's my fault.
I'm sorry. Last week I had to be there so early. There was no way for me to even do the show from a phone because I had to be I had to actually be getting there. So, but I love seeing you, and I love chatting, and it's so fun.
Yeah, well, we love having you on, and as I say, already in some ways, it is quite educational. We make the basic assumption that because this is our everyday way of life, that everybody knows about it. And there's the typical view of what we think Brits look like, and we're not a bit like that at all. So
no, you just have all these underground tunnels to your mistresses. Who knew?
Well, there you go. You see, actually, I went into Brighton on Saturday. I have a friend who is mentally stressed, I think is the best place to put it. I've looked after her for about 6 or 7 years. So I went and had a drink with her on Saturday. That was the first time I'd been into Brighton in a long time. But it hasn't changed. It's a young person's town, really. I mean, it throbs with life and so on. But it's like most places in Britain. It has got a history, and the Prince Regent and his mistresses are one of them.
That's hilarious. Well, it's so great to see you. Have a beautiful week. I'll see you on Monday.
Okay, look forward to it.
All right, ciao.
Bye, Suzanne. Bye. Suzanne Musho from New York. Another little bit of an insight into the way Americans live, particularly in the big city, in the Big Apple, and it's very interesting that I'd never heard of beach clubs, and also I've got my own idea of what New York is about, and to hear what it's really like from people who actually live in the city is very interesting. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at let's see, yes, 8:30, and Stuart Dolby will be here tomorrow morning. He's got an interviewee, and he also is very anxious to bring you up to date on energy, because that sector is opening up again with all sorts of surprises, not least of which is licenses to go and look for coal, for oil in the North Sea. Till tomorrow, toodle pip, I think. Yes. Toodle pip it is. There we go. Bye-bye. Well, there we are. I was busy reading some viewers' comments. They weren't terribly exciting, so I really will let you go now. And we'll really is Toodle Pip this time.